I try to be patient with all of this, because I think patience is important. I think patience is a thing that it's the first thing to go. The willingness to endure, the willingness to ignore slights, affronts, the willingness to pretend that the insult that just happened actually didn't. It seems that that's the first thing to go. It seems that willingness, that desire to advocate patience, to model patience, as best as I can, and recognizing that that's not very well. It almost seems that puts me in some sort of position where people look at how I interact, look at how I behave, and they presume it to be effortless. They assume that I am just naturally and natively inclined towards an unlimited tolerance for repetition, for abuse, for being misconstrued, misunderstood, misrepresented, and flat out misused. It seems that there's an assumption that these things don't affect me. And then they wonder why I disappear for a couple of weeks. I don't dislike the people that participate in this. I don't dislike the people who have no way of knowing that they're asking me the same question that I've already answered 12 times this week. They have no way of knowing that. I don't dislike them for it. I recognize it. It's an expression of interest. They see something that they want to know more about, and that should always be applauded. That should always be encouraged. And for the most part, I don't generally dislike the people that I argue with, the people that I wind up fighting with, even in those situations where there's a pretty well established antagonistic relationship. I don't dislike them. I dislike their position. I dislike how they handle other people. I dislike the idea that how we treat people is contingent on whether or not they agree with what we're talking about. I really dislike the idea that one's position within a debate or within a conflict should ultimately dictate how one behaves. I really dislike the idea of rhetorical conditions on standards of treatment. I dislike the idea that what you think should ultimately dictate how I treat you, or even how you behave in the confines of a debate. Recognizing how artificial it is. This isn't your living room. This isn't us hanging out at a bar. This isn't us grabbing a bite to eat. There's a surreal quality of showmanship to all of this. And some people take it in one direction, others take it in others. I generally try to make this a venue where I overextend myself, where if I'm going to model a behavior, if I'm going to overemphasize an aspect of my personality, and I'm in a context where it costs me less, where the consequences are less than they would be in perhaps a face-to-face meeting, then I want to emphasize the best. I want to overextend the positive elements of my character, I guess, in the hopes that some of it'll stick. That in practicing patience here, I'll be able to model patience a little bit better in my day-to-day life. It's very strange that so far every death threat I've gotten on YouTube has been from somebody concerned about Islam as a religion of violence. That's very odd that people concerned that Islam is violent would express that, would support that, would defend that with a threat of violence. I guess I don't teach irony in school anymore. Maybe we just don't have room to be ironic or recognize irony. Maybe we're too focused on this idea of sudden, terrible, impending crisis that we have no room. We don't feel we have enough time to recognize the ironies in our behaviors, that in arguing against group mentality arising out of a theistic conviction, that the rhetoric of those arguments gets very, very familiar, almost codified, and that there is a group mentality in that opposition, that it arises more often than not. I guess we almost seem to be in this game of psychosocial triage. One would almost wonder if we're living in a culture that necessarily cultivates a sense of trauma and crisis. So much so that we don't feel we can afford to be patient with each other or compassionate with each other. The risk, the immediacy of threat is too real. It seems too real to us to permit that vulnerability. And maybe presenting myself as more patient, more tolerant, and more compassionate than I actually am. Maybe that's a different sort. Maybe that's a different sort of damage control. Maybe that's a different sort of psychological armor.